Captain America, Brave New World. Not bad. It is more of a thriller than a comic book thriller than it is a comic book action movie. Captain America Winter Soldier was really, really good. This movie walks down the same path as that movie. A lot of similarities, a ton of similarities. It stars the incredible Tim Blake Nelson, Carl Lumbly, Danny Ramirez, Harrison Ford, Anthony Mackie, and Giancarlo Esposito as the villain, Sidewinder. You would have had to have seen a couple movies to catch everything in this movie. When the Hulk and the Abomination destroyed parts of New York, Samuel Stearns was trying to help David Banner. And he was like, hey man, yeah, send me your blood and I'll help you get rid of the Hulk. There was an incident, he got a little bit of that Banner blood inside of him and it deformed him a little bit. Thaddeus Ross found him and gave him more gamma radiation and morphed him, transformed him, and changed him into the leader. So it's kind of Thaddeus's fault. He sent the Abomination there to try to stop the Hulk, which turned into, Samuel Stearns getting irradiated, and then he just juiced him up some more, and then he stuck him in jail. Man, the government, right? I don't want to give everything away because this was a good movie and it did just come out, but I want to say it's a good movie. It isn't a great movie. I could see where they were going. I could see the path that they were trying to take, but there were a couple of slips. I did like Esposito as Sidewinder. He's essentially a terrorist, and he seemed threatening. Someone in the movie punctures the Falcon's or Captain America's uniform, but I thought it was vibranium. Maybe it's just parts of it is vibranium. Maybe just the wings. But I thought the whole suit was. But it got punctured at least twice. Then there were a lot of surprises. It looks like this movie leads in a lot of interesting directions. You remember when Natasha ended the Red Room and all of the Black Widows were together and they're like, what do we do now? And apparently a lot of them have gone into security, which would make sense if you've got a diluted version of the super soldier serum floating through your veins and you got all that kung fu karate hallway fight skills. You can't work in a grocery store. So they're still out there, and I'm glad that they spoke on that. There's a representative from that unit. Joaquin Torres is, of course, if you've seen the trailer, you know he is in fact now the Falcon. The Falcon is now Captain America. Joaquin is now the Falcon. Completely different story from the comic books. In the comic books, he was a mutant and a mutate. He got mutated and kind of became, the Falcon. But it's different in this story. The way they do it here makes more practical sense to me. Getting back to Sidewinder. Sidewinder is a part of a group called the Serpent Society. In the comics, they all have serpent-themed outfits. But in here, they're a terrorist organization with serpent-themed code names, which is cool. I understand it. They're trying to make it more real world. But I'm wondering, are they going to bring more people from the Serpent Society? It would be a waste to have that and not bring it back. I mean, they got Esposito in it. I really thought he was going to be Doom. I really thought so. And I mean, I talked to a friend that was like, well, he can't be Doom because Doom is from Latveria. I was like, yeah, but his mother's a gypsy. And he's like, yeah, so Giancarlo looks like this. Gypsies look like this. Dude could pass. I mean, he's an African American Italian man. He's got Italian features. He could pass. I think it would have been good to see him as Doom. Hopefully, Tony Stark transforming into Doctor Doom and his Robert Downey Jr. form is interesting. But I think Esposito would do it more justice. He's got more range as a villain. He's Gideon Moff. He was bugging out. He was the criminal in the Eddie Murphy movie, Trading Places. He was in a jail cell, so he must have done something wrong, I'm guessing. Stan Edgar, he's in Breaking Bad. He's a very believable, enjoyable villain. I think he would be good, as Doctor Doom. But I don't own a multi-billion-dollar company, so I don't make those decisions. But I think he would do a good job. So basically, what's happening here is you've got the Falcon and Thaddeus Ross, who aren't really that cool with each other. Thunderbolt Ross threw him in jail, so they're not super cool. But he calls him in and is like, hey man, I want you to restart the Avengers. That leads to certain parts of the movie. Also, Tiamat is still, with that one arm and his head and his shoulders hanging out of the ocean. They've decided that when he was transformed by Cersei, he was transformed into a new element, adamantium. Her powers grew, I guess. He's a great big island of adamantium. They call him Celestial Island. And now that they have an idea of what he's composed of, all of these different nations are trying to get to him. Now here's the thing though. Adamantium has to be heated to a certain degree, and you've only got, minutes to mold it into a shape, and then it solidifies and it's unbreakable, essentially. So the hardest metal on Earth. So if Tiamat is solid adamantium right now, how are they going to break pieces of him off to melt it down and turn it into other things? The metal is already too hot to be melted. So I don't know what they're going to do about that, how they're going to explain it, but comic books, right? It's so they've got that in play. All of the nations want that metal, and they're willing to fight for it. They're willing to fight the U.S., which I just can't imagine they consider that to be a winning battle, especially since the U.S. is like chock full of superpowered people. There's probably superpowered people in other nations too, but they haven't really discovered them or haven't really established them in the movies yet. And in comics, they're all over the place, all over the world. There's mutants and superpowered people and geniuses making devices everywhere. But right now, the MCU has most of them grounded in the good old US of A. So it's kind of a thriller, in the steps and the shadow of Winter Soldier. It's very close to that. There were a lot of similarities. There's a hospital scene that's similar to Winter Soldier. The whole on your left thing. There was a lot of them. I didn't mind it. I didn't mind that was happening in the movie. Isaiah Bradley is in here, and he plays a pivotal but small part in the movie. It looks like they may be using him more often, which would be interesting. In this movie, I got the feeling that he's going to play sort of a mentor role, because he's been a superhero probably longer than anybody else. So he's going to be like a mentor and trainer type of a deal. And that would be cool, have him come back. I mean, because he's not just some doddering old man. He's got that super soldier serum inside of him, so he can, punch holes through boxing bags and, throw a cigarette box into concrete, which didn't make sense to me because the cigarette, it had to be made out of tin or something, but he threw it across the room and it stuck into the concrete wall. This just looked like concrete and it was plywood or something, I don't know, but it was, so he's strong, is what I'm saying. He's strong, and even though he looks aged, his body is still fairly young. So he looked like he was taking a trainer role in this. If you watch the movie, you definitely have to stay to the end, because there is an Easter egg where, you know what? Right here, as I methodically rub my fingers together, right here is where a spoiler is going to start. I'm going to give a spoiler. I'm going to do it 20 seconds and it's done, starting right now. Stern is going to give, the leader is going to give and I guess in order to decide who's smart in this and who's smart with that, with him, it's probabilities, according to the movie. He can figure out probabilities so well that he can just about tell the future. He even tells somebody, if this happens, this person is going to actually say this. And he was right. So his thing is probabilities, and he predicts that there are other worlds with other superpowered beings, and they're coming here. It sounded a whole lot like Superman when Batman was talking to Lex, and Lex was like, you can't unring the bell, he's already on the way. It sounded like that kind of a warning. End of spoiler. But stay for the end, see that Easter egg at the end, that mid-credit scene. It's very short, but it gives you an idea of the direction of Marvel. I like it. I got the impression that they're going to reset everything after Secret Wars. So Secret Wars is going to be big. They're going to have to make it big because it's their, it's their end show. So they're going to reset everything, and that makes sense because after Secret Wars, they can bring in the other planets, or they can actually say, because they don't call this planet 616, they could say that 616 was the main planet all along, and Captain America and Wolverine actually know each other. Mutants have always existed. The Fantastic Four, why, of course they're here. They've always been here. In fact, they were the first family. They can correct a lot of things because they didn't have certain properties before, and now they're grabbing up all of these properties and they're like, you know what, we need to start over since we got all of this good stuff. And this movie, the conclusion of it makes you say, oh, okay, I see where you're going. I see, all right. So it was a good movie. Again, it wasn't great. It was, I don't want to say desperately, but it was definitely trying to walk the path of Winter Soldier and be like a thriller. But it was good. It was definitely enjoyable. But I would give Captain America, Brave New World, I told a friend of mine a 6, but I'm going to go with a 7. 7 bags of popcorn. 7 bags of popcorn. Because that's what I think about that. But more importantly, what do you think about that? Now that we talked about the video, let's talk about it some more in the comments. And as always, if you like the video, if you like the content, subscribe. And then like.
Popcorn passport. Get your going fast.